Now, I'll be honest with you guys, while I thought this was a very cool football boot when it was unveiled, I was skeptical of how it would ultimately fit, feel, and perform because of what we've seen in the past from laceless speed boots from the Adidas brand. However, I am pleasantly surprised by not only how great these fit, but how good the boots are in general. And of course, I'm talking about the brand new Adidas X Ghosted Plus, the laceless option in their new speed boot lineup that I happen to have in the AG variation, which does differ in some ways from the FG model. We'll talk about that in the video. But as a whole, this is a very impressive pair of football boots. For those that will ask, yes, I will be reviewing the FG variation. They've just been a little bit tricky to get a hold of. Nonetheless, this gives you an idea of what the X Ghosted Plus is all about. Plus, we get to go over the new sole plate and stud pattern made specifically for AG. That's actually pretty good. But as far as the X Ghosted Plus is concerned, this is surprisingly very impressive. I would not only argue that this is the best laceless speed boot that Adidas has ever made, it is arguably the best laceless football boot ever made, period, which is saying a lot because I've not historically been a huge fan of laceless football boots. These, however, have surprised me in the best way possible. I want to go over all the details in today's video. I'll compare it to the FG variation because, of course, I know what the differences are, and I'll also do some slight comparisons with the X Ghosted Point 1, which is the laced, cheaper alternative to the Plus model, and of course, take a look at how the boots fit and feel on feet. So if you're interested in learning more, please stick around, watch the entire review, and if you're interested in a pair of these for yourself, either the FG or AG variation. Unfortunately, the AG variation is only available in Europe, but the FG model, it's available everywhere. You can click the first link down below or the little pop-up in the corner of the screen. That's gonna take you to the review page on my website where you'll find buy it now links with exclusive SR4U coupon codes where you'll be able to pick these up below their normal $275 retail price. As always, if you guys do end up enjoying this video, please don't forget to support it with a like. That helps me out a lot. And if you are new here watching for the first time and don't want to miss out on weekly content on everything football boots, make sure you hit that subscribe button. As far as extras go, Adi have changed some things up. It does come in a drawer style box, which we're used to seeing for Plus models, but it has this very cool kind of X logo with these little cutouts on the top. And then for those that are curious about the label, there it is. It also has this weird kind of triangular cutout to pull the drawer open. And then inside the box, you will get, I've already removed them from the boots, these shoe horns, or I guess placeholders for the boots to really show off the vacuum effect. They are exactly the same shape as the boot and they fit extremely tight. I've actually got several DMs asking how to get them out of the boots because they're that difficult to remove, which is kind of hilarious, but it is a nice little extra, especially if you want to maintain the shape of your boots when you're not using them. Not entirely necessary, but it's cool that they include them. And then they also give you a string bag with the Plus model that is finally not just generic black and white. You can see it is white and I guess gold. It's supposed to be gold, but it ends up looking kind of like brown with the X logo and the Adidas logo there on the front, perforated white mesh. It's a decent string bag, not the best effort, but better than what we normally get. It gets a string bag rating of X out of X squared. Now, as for the boots themselves, the first thing that you might have noticed is that they're literally see-through. If you are looking for the most barefoot touch on the ball of any football boot currently in existence, this is the one that you should go for. The upper is super thin, and because of this laceless design that really has no overlapping materials across the top of the foot, it really does feel like you aren't wearing any football boots at all, which is a good or bad thing depending on what your preferences are. Now, of course, this goes without saying, there is absolutely no protection provided by this football boot. If you get stepped on, you'll probably end up bleeding, and because they're see-through, you'll see the blood on the inside of the boots, which is both cool and frightening at the same time. This is all possible because of a material called Mirage Skin, which is different from the fluoro skin upper that you're gonna find on the X Ghosted Point 1, where admittedly, my first impression of holding this boot in my hand is that this upper felt kind of rubbery, but upon putting them on feet and just getting used to the feel of this upper, I'm actually really impressed with how this feels in that it's a lot more natural on feet than it is just kind of holding the boot in your hand. What you'll find here is that it's made from a single layer of material. So it is similar to the fluoroskin upper of the 0.1 model in that regard, where internally it's kind of got this minimal amount of texture. It almost feels like a textile mesh. I'm not exactly sure what it is because it's entirely see-through, where the surface of the upper is left completely smooth and has this kind of soft silicone, I guess, type of texture to it, where there's a subtle amount of grip, and you can very clearly see that there are some differences in terms of the thickness of this material depending on the section of the football boot. But as a whole, it feels phenomenal. Basically like a really thin layer of skin sitting on top of your foot, which really does give you this super one-to-one connection with the ball in terms of providing arguably the truest barefoot sensation of any football boot ever. Maybe this is a weird comparison and the colorway definitely helps my case here, but if you took the 2006 Lotto Zero Gravity, which is the OG laceless football boot, and you made this in 2020, I feel like that's exactly what the X Ghosted Plus is. Now, of course, being the Plus model, this does feature a laceless design where you'll notice that it does have some textile as a base to this area of the foot. That's fully internal, and it's there basically to add structure to the very thin polyurethane that is on top. And you can even see along the edges where it connects to the rest of the Mirage Skin upper. It is almost entirely seamless, no chunky stitching or anything like that. There's just a slight amount of added thickness where the two pieces are bonded together, and you don't feel it at all on feet, which is really cool. The touch, because it's so thin, ends up being completely uniform across the entire foot, which is very, very impressive as a technical achievement. And in terms of actual structure and lockdown, because of this laceless system, you'll find that this area does not stretch very much, which does make putting these boots on a little bit trickier than most other laceless football boots. You might struggle the first couple of times, but once they're on your feet, I really appreciate the fact that this doesn't have a lot of give to it. So as long as the shape of the boot matches your foot close enough, the amount of lockdown and just the way that the boot will wrap your foot in general is extremely impressive. They really touted the whole vacuum fit aspect with both the 0.1 and the Plus variations of the new X Ghosted boot, but it's extremely noticeable in the X Ghosted Plus. And from just a pure fit perspective, and I'm not sure if it's because of the laceless design, I actually find that the Plus fits my foot better than the 0.1, which is kind of surprising. Definitely not what I was expecting, but just in terms of pure fit for me personally, this is easily the best fitting laceless boot that I've ever had on my feet. The cut of this boot is also really cool. Obviously it's a low cut design, but it comes really low on the sides with this V-cut shape to it. It's got the extension piece at the tail, and then even here at the front, the way that this is shaped, it doesn't have that unnecessary extension piece that the X19 Plus had, which made it easier to put the boots on. But once you actually get these on your feet, the way that this wraps across the top of your foot, basically right before your ankle starts, really gives you this seamless sensation where the boot feels like it was almost formed around your feet rather than being wrapped and forced around the shape of your foot, which is really impressive, and it kind of shows off for one of the first times ever the benefit of a laceless design, which I quite like. Also, for those that will ask about the Adidas logo being upside down, the reason why they did that is so when you look down at your own feet, the logo is right side up. Moving to the heel liner, that is also different from the X Ghosted Plus, where you'll notice that the heel bumps are not only a little bit smaller, the liner in general is even that much more minimal. So there's no extra material basically where you don't need it. There is effectively no liner on the sides. It's just the same synthetic that you have lining the rest of the inside of the boot, which is perfectly fine. But the heel pillows, not only are they smaller, they're made from this slightly, I don't want to call it rough, but almost like a Velcro type material, similar to what we saw previously on the Adidas Predator Instinct at the base of that heel liner. I really like this material, and it's there just to grab your socks a little bit more, I guess, securely, to give you as much heel lockdown as possible, which is going to vary from person to person because this is a laceless football boot, but the design as a whole works really nicely and I have no complaints. Again, just super technical. It's very impressive how they actually managed to put that inside of the heel area, where you can see running through the middle of the pads it is completely translucent, which is a really interesting design choice. And then the insole, fully removable. It's the same as what you'll find on the 0.1 variation. It's quite simple, honestly. It's a really soft synthetic suede liner on the top, features some perforations through the forefoot as well as the heel, and it's made from a single layer of this white foam. Pretty much the standard insole that we're used to seeing from top-end Adidas boots. As for the sole plate and stud pattern, of course this is the AG model, so there are some differences when compared to the FG version. The first thing you'll notice is that there is still an external heel counter, it just features a different design. This is technically not a speed frame. This has a heel counter that's more smooth in terms of its design and kind of along the lines of what we're used to seeing from speed frames and sprint frames from Adidas over the last 10 years. So nothing really major to complain about there. And then the sole plate, as you'll notice, is pretty much one solid piece of plastic. It does not have the carbon fiber Carbitex insert through the forefoot, which is something that I was a huge fan of with the FG variation of the X Ghosted 0.1, and the FG version of the X Ghosted Plus features the exact same sole plate with a wearable finish. So that is really good. I can highly recommend that if you need the FG variation, but if you require an AG sole plate and stud pattern, this is actually not half bad. The one thing I will say in regards to the feel of the flex in the forefoot is that it's not actually that far off from the version with the Carbitex insert. It's a little bit more flexible, but honestly, it still has this good amount of kind of spring back effect to it. Whatever they did internally to reinforce it, they did a very good job. And I think the only reason why they didn't include the Carbitex insert here on the AG variation is due to cost. They're obviously going to produce and sell a lot more of the FG model, so they can offset that, I guess, development cost with the fact that they're going to sell a lot more and make a lot more, where the AG variation, they're going to sell a lot less. I'm assuming they didn't want to spend the money on it. I know that's kind of a little bit of a cop-out from Adidas, but we see this from a lot of brands, so I guess it's not that surprising. Nonetheless, the sole plate still feels really good, and I'm not unhappy with this setup in any way at all. I actually think that the slightly more natural flex that you get from this sole plate really matches the feel of this upper quite nicely. And then as far as the AG stud pattern is concerned, it's really not that far off the regular stud pattern from the Adi brand. The studs are maybe just a millimeter or two shorter. It's a very minimal difference, and you'll notice that they add a fourth stud along the outside of the forefoot and then two support studs in the middle. Other than that, it's really just the thickness of the sole plate being a little bit thicker than normal, which is good for an AG surface, and the fact that the studs are a different shape, where this has this kind of three-sided shape to the tip, but it's more of a conical stud in terms of feel. And again, when you're playing on artificial grass, you don't necessarily want blades or chevrons like you'll find on the FG variation, where that can get a little bit clingy. This is still going to give you that freedom to twist and pivot when your foot is planted on artificial grass. Safer, better for durability, and ultimately just the better call if you're going to be regularly playing on a surface like that. So even though this doesn't feature the very cool and very impressive Carbitex insert, if you're playing on artificial grass, or if you're playing on FG and AG and you want one boot that's going to work for both surfaces, this stud pattern will definitely get the job done. When it comes to weight, I think most people would expect a football boot with a translucent upper to weigh almost nothing. Unfortunately, these are not as light as I think some would expect them to be. And keep in mind, this is the AG stud pattern variation, which I would expect to weigh at least a little bit more than the FG model, but I can't say that for sure. Nonetheless, in a size 9.5 US, you can see that the X Ghosted Plus in the AG variation weighs in at 7.6 ounces, the equivalent of 215 grams, which is not lighter than the X19 Plus if we're comparing it to the previous model, and not lighter than the FG variation of the X Ghosted 0.1, but still overall relatively lightweight. Of course, if we're comparing these to Mercurials, which a lot of people always want to do, those are also a little bit lighter than these. But again, if you're looking for that lightweight feel, you're going to get it from this boot. And I think the appeal here is more so the upper and the laceless design more than anything. Now, like I mentioned earlier, because there isn't a lot of stretch to the upper, especially across the top of the foot, they're not the easiest boots to get on. So I'm going to show you the struggle here in real time. Keep in mind, I am wearing some Pure Grip socks, the most affordable grip socks on the market, available at puregripsocks.com. Definitely check them out if you're interested in some. Doesn't help with putting these on when you are wearing grip socks, but I think laceless boots, more than any other type of football boot, benefit the most from grip socks, just in terms of reducing any kind of slippage inside the boots. But you can see I made pretty quick work of that. I have had some practice, obviously. And once they're on, there's nothing to adjust, just like most other laceless boots. And as you can see, The wrap on my foot is almost perfect. On feet, the X Ghosted Plus feels way better than I was expecting, both in regards to the fit as well as just the feel of the upper in general. You can see as I wiggle my toes how nicely this upper moves with your feet. And of course, it is more of a plasticky type synthetic, so you're gonna get some creases, especially because it is laceless. There's nothing kind of pulling in the upper, but it still feels really snug on feet, at least for my foot type. And again, something to keep in mind with the laceless football boot is it is going to vary in terms of the quality of fit from person to person, depending on the specific shape of your feet. For me personally, as you can see, I get a pretty good fit here. There's barely any flaring at the sides of the ankle, despite being slightly flat-footed. The boots don't feel overly tight in any way at all. I wouldn't say that the lockdown in the heel is phenomenal, but that's kind of what you expect with a laceless football boot. But in general, they feel decently secure. It's the best fitting laceless boot that I've personally ever had on my feet, which is very high praise. So as a whole, in regards to fit and feel, I could not be more impressed. This AG sole plate is a little bit more flexible than the FG variation with the Carbotex insert, but still feels really solid. The heel liner, I quite like the feel of as well. A nice amount of padding, no issues with blistering or anything like that. And again, for those that are fans of the Tajin synthetic Mercurial days and even the synthetic F50 Adizero days, the synthetic of this upper is arguably better than any of those boots. Plus with the, I guess, uniqueness of the laceless design, these really do have something very special about them, which is what laceless football boots should be, I guess, striving to provide, and this does that extremely well. In terms of overall width and fit, like I said, it's really gonna vary from person to person. I hate to say this in any of my reviews, but it really is one of those football boots that you kind of have to try on. If you have really wide feet, I definitely would not recommend them, but if you've worn laceless boots in the past and you like the way that they fit, you'll probably fit in these. That's about as good a description as I can possibly give. They're just not great for super wide feet. And then as far as sizing is concerned, I'm wearing these in my usual size 9.5 US, and the fit and the length is perfect. So if you're looking to order a pair for yourself, I would strongly recommend going true to size in order to achieve the best possible fit. We've all heard the saying, don't judge a boot by its cover. Don't judge a book by its cover, and that's the saying that I would use to describe the X Ghosted Plus, because I've reviewed a lot of football boots, and I think everybody's been in this situation where you pick a pair of boots based on this expectation that you have on how they're going to feel, and you always hope that it lives up to that expectation. And I'll be honest with you guys in saying that my expectation for this boot was not very good. I really thought, first impressions, of course, that this was just going to be a fancier, cooler looking variation of the X19 Plus that was going to be okay, but I wasn't going to like it very much. Not only have these exceeded my expectation in terms of feel and overall fit, but it is very impressive, not only as a technical achievement, but as a laceless football boot in general, to the point where I can honestly say this is the best laceless football boot that I've ever worn. What impressed me about the X Ghosted Plus is that for a laceless football boot, it doesn't feel as compromised as other laceless boots that I've worn, where I can't say 100% that this solves all the issues that I've complained about over the years with laceless boots, because those issues are still present to a point where, of course, there's no adjustability, so the way that this fits you specifically will definitely vary a lot from person to person. It'll fit some people perfectly, it'll fit some people horribly, and because they're laceless, there's really no way to adjust that. The lockdown is not as good as it could be, but again, that's going to be very much determined by how well they fit you. And in terms of overall responsiveness, especially with this being a speed boot, it's certainly not the most responsive speed boot option on offer, even from the Adidas brand. The X Ghosted Point 1 is ultimately the better objective performing football boot. Nonetheless, if you're a fan of the laceless concept and these boots end up fitting you really well, the experience on offer, the benefit of a laceless football boot design, you really do feel with this Mirage Skin upper. It really does feel like a second layer of skin on your feet with no other nonsense going on. So as long as you're not looking for maximum lightweight feel, maximum lockdown, and maximum responsiveness, what you're getting across the board in those categories is still really, really good. But of course, it's that special sensation that you can only get from a laceless design that really does feel like the highlight here. And aside from the Copa 19 Plus and 20 Plus, which I also really like, this is one of very few laceless football boots where the laceless aspect of it feels like the star of the show. And the fact that they could make that a standout feature that's a positive one is something that I'm really impressed with. They're definitely not for everybody, and I'm not sure that I would personally pick them over the X Ghosted Point 1, but if you're a fan of laceless football boots, I think you'll be pretty happy with these. Anyways, guys, that's it for my review. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, be sure to support it with a like. Again, if you're interested in a pair of these for yourself, either the FG or AG variation, first link down below, that's gonna take you to the review page on my website, where you'll find buy it now links with exclusive SR4U coupon codes, where you'll be able to pick these up below their normal $275 retail price. If you have any questions, as always, leave them down below in the comment section, and I'll do my best to get an answer out to you as soon as I possibly can. If you're not subscribed to the channel already, make sure you hit that subscribe button along with the little bell notification so you get notified when the next new video goes live. You can find all my social media information linked down below in the description as well. And other than that, guys, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.